Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable. We are very excited today to have two gentlemen who are very influential in many things that go on in St. Clair County. Let's first welcome back to the show the chairman of the board of St. Clair County Board of Commissioners, Mr. Jeff Bohm.
Paul, thanks for having us again.
Dan Casey from the Economic Development Alliance.
Hi, Paul.
Gentlemen, welcome. We thought we better get the two of you in here. There's been a lot of things going on in the county in the last month or so, last few months. But behind that is you two with many months of effort and work to come to where we are today. EDA represents so many of the businesses throughout the area, and we know, well, you represent the county, the people, and together it seems to be coming together. Dan, what's going on with the EDA?
Well, first I would say we have a great collaboration with a lot of different partners, which I think is really important today because it's difficult to get projects off the ground. It can be difficult to find the right site, and you have to have good community partners to make it happen. So I think a lot of our success that we've had over the past few years is because we partner so closely with people like the county, local communities, the school districts, and so it's made a big difference.
And Jeff, you don't mind working with the business people, or you're just not concentrating just on the government side.
You know, serving on the board for 13 years, the dynamics from 13 years ago versus where it's at today, I don't want to say there wasn't much collaboration 13 years ago, but condominiums were good. People had their own monies. They could self-fund a lot of the different things. You didn't have to work together, I always say one of the good things that came out of a bad economy was it really forced everybody to sit down at the table and work with one another to really work to move things forward. And if you didn't have those groups come together, you would not have all the activity that we currently have going in the county. So fortunate to have organizations like the EDA and the county and the community foundation and a lot of our city and township partners that we realize that. And a big part of what Dan and I are involved in, you so often hear us talk about our Blue Meets Green, which is a lot of our regional planning efforts that we do. And at our last session, we had 92 people, 92 leaders of their respected organizations assisting us really to help put that roadmap together to help move things.
You've had some announcements in the last couple of weeks about Ira Township and some other things, new factories, new things that are happening.
Yeah, it's funny because we're really out of buildings, at least on the industrial side. We still have some commercial buildings available out there. But we're out of buildings on the industrial side, so it's difficult to get a project, right? Everybody has to build a building. And so the project in Ira Township, that's exactly what happened. It's a company from Macomb County that's moving out of a certain situation. They were looking for a building, came over here, found a site in a place called the Andrews Industrial Park. So that's right on County Line Road and Marine City Highway. And they're building a 28,000 square foot building, and they're moving their operation there, filling up another space in that park. And there's more interest too. Another company just came out of Macomb County, out of Chesterfield Township, and located in an existing building in that same park. But we got a call the other day. This just gives you an example. We got a call the other day from a company that earlier this year announced an expansion project. And they said, we just learned this week that we've won 2 more contracts and we need to expand again.
Wonderful.
And we're thinking, well, that's great. We love the jobs, we love the tax base, but we don't have any buildings left. So where are you going to go? And so what we're seeing is mostly these greenfield development kind of projects where people pick a piece of dirt somewhere. Hopefully it has water and sewer and roads, and they build their building and then they occupy it.
So you're telling me that in the industrial parks of Port Huron and Marysville and St. Clair and Marine City, there's no space?
There's nothing left. We have the biggest building we have available in the whole county right now is about 66,000 square feet. That's the only building in the Port Huron Industrial Park that's available.
Functional. Now, sometimes you drive by these buildings, though, too, a lot of them are part of functional obsolescence, right? So if you see a building, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by these buildings, but if you see a building, you know, a lot of times, 'cause you don't have to drive by you know, the overhead cranes, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
these specialty types of things. A lot of these buildings are just old and tired, long and short of it, and they're not able to be used for that.
So they
when
can't be adapted to something new.
They're tear downs, you know,
Okay.
a lot of times. So if you see an empty building somewhere and, you know, how come that building's not full? Dan's been a lot more than I have, but you walk in the front door and you turn around and you walk back out because it's really, you know, they're not usable for a lot of types of things. So, yeah.
There was an announcement on Paul Miller had this morning that the Army Corps of Engineers and the people from Warren from the TACCOM were out at the K-Pac rest area with trucks. You've been part of that, I think, haven't you? They went across the Blue Water Bridge the other day. And
Yeah.
Talk
right.
to us about the unmanned vehicles.
Yeah, so the Army, the military, generally speaking, has been testing along I-69 and in other places in Michigan, but they wired I-69 throughout the entire stretch of St. Clair County into the beginning part of Lapeer County. And so they're doing a lot of testing. And when they first started last year, they were mainly testing communications equipment from vehicle to vehicle. Now they're beginning to take out the unmanned vehicles and they're putting them last in line. And they're still testing communications, but they're also testing how that unmanned vehicle interacts with other vehicles on the roadway. Last week they were over at the Blue Water Bridge and they were crossing into Canada and coming back just to see what that kind of interaction would be like with a different country, different technology. So it's a long learning process, and I think what people need to take away is all of the same kinds of testing is taking place regarding the domestic automotive industry, you know, cars and trucks. And a lot of that testing is happening in Michigan. So the military seems to prefer I-69 because it's fairly light on traffic, and you'll see a lot of the cars and trucks, the other vehicles, are being tested in Ann Arbor and in Ypsilanti. I
got a kick also about the report this morning with Paul Miller was that there was going to be some construction along 69. I thought, well, that's really cool. It'll really be a good test for these unmanned vehicles to see if they get through the construction. So
Yeah.
So if you're driving down the road and you look over and you don't see somebody in the driver's seat,
don't be scared.
don't freak out.
Right, don't freak out.
Yeah, I think the thing about it is the testing is going to take a number of years because of the complexity of a road system. When you think about, you know, what happens in a heavy rain event, what happens if the road floods, snow, heavy snows, all of these things, accidents, emergency vehicles coming out of nowhere, all these things can be impediments. And so they have to learn how to program the computers and then be able to communicate from vehicle to vehicle in order to overcome all of those challenges. So, you know, I think the technology capability is there. It's a matter of putting all the pieces together and then testing it, and then making sure that our state and federal regulations will allow not only the testing, but eventually the driving of those vehicles.
Be interesting to see when they run into their first deer along 69.
Yeah.
All the rest of us have had that experience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so let's see what that'll. Hotels, motels, other kinds of jobs. What else is on the offing for the county? You always got some stuff.
Well, St. Clair Inn, right? I mean, everybody, been a long time coming. We've been working on that project. Actually, I looked back because I was kind of referencing some notes. Our first meeting that we ever had with Mr. Kotowski was December 28th of 15. We got the call and said that there was a new owner that was in town. And I know a lot of times when you go by and you don't see activity, those types of things, doesn't mean that a lot of other things aren't happening on the backsides. Mr. Kotowski's made a sizable investment in a project. He's had to hire numerous consultants. You know, a lot of these things are front-loaded deals, so you have to hire a consultant, pay them X amount of dollars. Now, granted, you get backside money that'll come via through the grant process, but those things, you know, like I said, they take time. I look at the Marine City Hotel, I look at the Convention Center, I look at the Sperry's project. So when I have these conversations, I always refer to other projects that, you know, the county and the EDA has spearheaded a lot of these things throughout the county. One thing is consistent, none of them happen overnight, right?
Right.
So, you know, so anybody that lives in town, drove by the St. Clair Inn, you see all the demo work that's going on there right now and stuff. Dan and I are in constant contact with the owner, and they're moving forward. You know, this thing's 31 to 35 million, give or
Marvelous.
take, you know, whatever.
Marvelous.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
The thing that I've seen meeting him and interviewing him here with you was the fact that he has a general concern and for quality, and he wants to maintain the beautiful building that we have there in St. Clair, in the St. Clair Inn, and I think that's superb.
Yeah, I tell you, it's probably been a lot easier to tear the thing down and start over, right? You hate to say that, but when you get into some of these brownfield redevelopment sites and things, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and that, you know, it's 100-year-old plus structure, right? So no, Jeff's done. You know, he's fortunate to have him in our community.
Yep.
Sees big vision for us. You know. I'm excited because we all understand the magnitude of the St. Clair Inn for the city. You talk to any of the business people, and when things were good, the St. Clair Inn was thriving.
Yep.
Took care of a lot of the other issues, you know, down in your shopping districts. So.
Couple new apartments, one in St. Clair Township, one will be coming shortly to the city of St. Clair itself. That brings people, and you said you had a need for employees too. Looking for employees throughout the county, right?
Yeah, well, there was a study that was done, a housing study in St. Clair, and then another one that was done earlier this summer in Port Huron. Both studies called for the same kind of thing. The one in St. Clair indicated that we had demand for about 200 units. So between the St. Clair Township project and the St. Clair project, we're going to come close to meeting that demand here locally. So that's good. And then there will be other places in the county, like Fort Gratiot Township is one part of the county where they're looking for that type of housing. Down in Algonac, that's another area where you could see some senior housing. So those are a couple of the markets that we're working on right now, trying to bring investors in and looking at that type of product.
Anything we should know about that you can tell us at this point about anything else new and exciting? I know working with some of these things you can't discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I know the phone's ringing more than it ever has, right? I mean, now you're kind of dealing, ironically, we had a meeting earlier this morning. Now you kind of run in the situation with some of the trying to fill the jobs, right? So I mean, you can have all these employers come to town, set up shop, but you have to have the skill set to plug into that. We have a big educational summit that we're working on with RISA that's going to have all the superintendents here coming up later this week. Got to give Kevin Miller a lot of credit for putting that together, because a lot of times we're in these particular meetings with employers and things that you're hearing it consistent. It's just not a St. Clair issue. Don't get St. Clair County issue there. In Macomb, I've talked to the folks down in Oakland County. They have engineering shortages, you know, these types of things. So, you know, as the demand comes back, and hence, you know, when you look at the economic downturn, you know, Michigan lost 900,000 people or so. You know, a lot of those people were skilled, you know, high skill sets, those types of things. I have a half a dozen friends that I could tell you that moved and got other jobs in other places. To get them back now, though, they've got kids in school and those types of things, so you get
some things to tie you down.
You get rooted, so to get those guys to try to move back to the area, the time's not right. So it's, you know, the uptick is great. Now we've just really got to continue to work on, you know, filling the demand, and that's where the Economic Development Alliance, where with all their workforce trainings involved in the state, really, you know.
Yeah, I think talent is the new currency in economic development. And as we talk to consultants around the country, you know, they say that it used to be a building or a development-ready site. That was the first and most important criteria for most companies that were out there looking for locations. Today, it's really talent and availability of workforce. And the more that we can do to prepare our talent for the jobs that are available, as well as to provide them with information on our existing talent, the easier it'll be for us to land that project. So it really puts us in an interesting situation nationally, and even internationally for that matter, because we're all competing for talent now. You know, we were just competing for companies and investment. Now we're competing for talent, you know, and so we have to do whatever we can, working with our educational partners, to make sure that students are coming through the K through 12 system and They're coming out with the kind of knowledge and credentials that they need to be able to go to work right away, because baby boomers are retiring. We're at full employment right now, and that situation is only going to get worse with more and more people retiring. So young people coming through K through 12, we need to prepare them for every type of job that's out there. So we can't be concerned about just sending kids to college anymore, because now we need plumbers, and we need carpenters, and we need people to sell shoes, everything across the whole spectrum. So I think going back to our earlier theme, collaboration, that's one of the really exciting things in this county, is that so many of our educational partners and industry are now working together to try to prepare that talent, to give our educators the feedback that they need so that they're teaching the right curriculum, making it relevant, so that when these students do graduate, whether it's from college or high school, they're ready to go into the workforce and contribute.
You ran a coding class a few weeks ago. How'd that go?
Oh, the coding class is good, and RESA has a new program that's full, and so this is at the Tech Center, and it's the first time that they've ever done this with a coding class. Next year they're going to be expanding and adding a few more. Now EDA is getting involved because we still see a gap in the educational system. The gap is with middle school students, and so we're talking about introducing a coding program. It's a nonprofit from Indiana that's going to come in and potentially run it. But what it will do is it'll provide an introduction to coding and computer programming for middle school students. And the purpose of it is to feed into RESA's new program when those students get into high school.
That's marvelous. That's the first I've heard of it. That's spectacular. That's exciting news. Somebody like that come through and help us there.
Yeah, they can't say enough good things about RESA. I always, funny story, because I have a nephew of mine who's a little bit younger. He'll probably get mad that I say this, but he said the kid was probably a D- at best in school, but he could tear your car apart at 12 years old and put the motor back together. And he was just that kid, and super successful today, very on hands, that kind of thing. And that RESA program that he got into, man, just really put him on the right direction and stuff.
Well, and we've seen it here because we use so many of the students from the digital media classes over the years. And there's some great success stories there. People going on to NBC News and NBC Sports, et cetera, and they've got some really good, solid programs. And the community doesn't realize it a lot. A lot of times, what a wealth of information and a wealth of support that campus is at the Tech Center there. So it's good. Have we missed anything, fellas?
Well, I just wanted to mention that one of the really exciting things about economic development is we get involved in these projects at the ground floor, and we watch them rise up from the dirt, so to speak. And so, this is the time where we want to celebrate, because, we'll get these projects that finally go under construction. We cut a ribbon. Next thing you know, they open their doors. And it affects real people, People are getting jobs, are able to work in these places. It's creating tax revenue for the jurisdictions so they can provide services. So it's all great to see these things happen. So a couple of the projects I wanted to mention real quick is Wright Plastic Products in St. Clair. They're building an expansion of their building right now. It's their second expansion in 2 years.
Marvelous.
So yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah. Campbell Shaw and Steel is another one. They're in Marysville. They're doing a unique expansion where they're building on 3 of the 4 sides of their current building.
Wow.
So they're literally building around it to maximize, the land that they have. So that project's under construction. That's a great thing. Out in K-Pac, there's a truck plaza under construction next year, and that's Love's. And next year, Love's is going to build another one in St. Clair Township.
At Wadhams in 984?
Yeah, so everyone thinks, well, it's just it's a glorified gas station, right? Well, not really. It's a $12 million investment, and you're talking about 120 jobs that they create to work there. And most of them, not most of them, a good portion of them are full-time jobs.
It's just marvelous.
So, right, and then, a lot of us have young people at home that are looking for a job when they're in high school and whatnot. So that's the kind of place they would go to get their first job.
Yeah, and I was in Marine City to go to church on Sunday and went by the inn on the water, and the parking lot's going in. They got the sidewalks in on both sides of the building on the side street, and that's just a marvelous story.
Yeah, yeah. The inn's a great story. we're going to be there tomorrow, actually. We're doing a tour with a reporter from Cranes. And, anything we can do to talk about that, because that's a really good example of collaboration, how everybody came together to make that happen. Because it's a place where you wouldn't ordinarily see a hotel necessarily.
Correct.
But there was definitely demand for one in Marine City.
I just want to touch on, we have the editor of Cranes coming out tomorrow. We're going to
Marvelous.
spend 3 hours with him. Cranes, obviously, the business publication. 3 years ago, Cranes was not covering St. Clair County.
Correct.
We spent a lot of time and worked very hard to make these contacts statewide, so when these opportunities come up, we have these people and we're able to take them around and showcase our area, and people read about it in the Metro Detroit. That's a big part of the economic development piece. There's 3 million people that live an hour away from here, and a lot of times the out of sight, out of mind adage, right? You got to get people
Right.
here. You need to be promoting that type of things and those types of things. So, that just is another example of hard work, essentially paying off to make those connections to be able to bring those people to town and show our area off.
And you have to keep telling your story. And there's 3 million people there, what's the percentage have never heard of us? That's
Keep pounding in their head, Paul.
that's right. Absolutely, totally
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
And wow, I'm very impressed that the editor of Cranes is
Yeah.
coming out. And they did a nice section on a year or so ago.
Yeah, last 2 years actually.
Last
for
2
us,
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that seemed that you got some results, I think, from that effort. So you're talking to the right people when you're talking to the Cranes audience.
Yeah,
that
yeah. The investment
can-
community looking
investment
for
community.
opportunity and really put us on the map. And
Right.
a lot of things that Dan does with his investor tours too. I mean, these guys are always, I don't want to use the term bird dogging, but they're always out
That's their
bird dogging
job.
business. That's their job, chasing it. And they do a great job doing it.
Well, someone needs to sell the county, so that's one of our important jobs.
Right.
Before we wrap up, I just wanted to make a couple real quick comments. One is what a great job they've done in Marine City.
Oh,
I drove around the downtown a little bit last week. I was on my way to a meeting, and not on the main street, but around some of the side streets now, some of the antique stores and some of the other facade improvements they've done really made the place look really good, and welcoming for visitors, and filled up a couple of vacancies that they had. And so it's really exciting to see that happen in Marine City. I just wish we had some land down there to do new development, because this would be the time in the cycle where you'd bring in an investor and they would want to build a building to take advantage of all that energy that's there.
I got to give them a lot of credit, but I'm a St. Clair kid. St. Clair Marine City, longtime rivals, no. But it's no, kudos to them, because it is absolutely amazing the transformation that downtown has went through, and people like Tom and Kathy Verton coming out and doing some non-traditional investments, that have worked out. And you look at a lot of these things that we have.
Missy and Jeremy.
We have, and what they've done down there with the fish company to, a lot of our investors that are in this area right now are a lot out of town, a lot of Grand Rapids people, a lot of, I don't call it fresh money, if you may, in town doing things. They see really good stuff for us, and I really think you're starting to see a shift in some of the mindset too in the conversations. I had this conversation the other day. I said, we're 3 to 5 projects, and St. Clair would be one of those 3 once that's complete. A couple other things I really think to get people really believing in our area again, because I think we kind of didn't have much faith in ourselves, to be
Correct.
quite honest, for a long time. And I really see that shift in conversation, and that's, guys like him running his organization and stuff.
I was proud to see Phil O'Connor from Slows down in Detroit is coming to Port Huron to speak about his successes over the last years of building Slows and all that kind of stuff. And the other person on the docket, on the dais with him, will be Missy Fisher from Marine City Fish. And I thought, wow, here's a guy that's way up here in the world of restaurant business.
Yep.
And Missy, who's starting, but she's on an equal basis. That's a real compliment to them and to their efforts down in Marine City.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that is, you bring in someone from the outside who's very successful. You bring them in as a good example, and people are more likely, believe it or not, to put credibility in somebody who's out of town than
From
they are
out of town.
someone who's doing a project right in your backyard.
That's
But
right.
what they're doing with that program that I really like is they're bringing in the out-of-towner who's been very successful, and they're marrying them up with a local business that's also been very successful.
Right.
And what it's telling everyone else that's in the market that wants to do a similar kind of project is that it can happen, there are resources here, and there's a market here that will support their business. So to me, that's a great program. We want to keep doing that. We want to continue to bring in people and marry them up with the local people that also have been successful.
Gentlemen, thank you. Any
Paul, thank you.
final thoughts? Nothing?
Thanks for your time.
Mr.
Always a
Chairman of the
pleasure.
Board.
Thanks
Mr.
as always,
Casey,
Paul.
nice to see you. That's about it, ladies and gentlemen, for this edition of the Roundtable. Thanks very much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Paul Dingeman. See you soon. Great.